The Tennessee Titans need to draft an offensive tackle in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft, but they can't pass on Rome Odunze. I'll explain why on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. It is Mock Draft Monday, and I am here to tell you that the Tennessee Titans cannot pass on Rome Odunze at number 7. I'm going to dive into my mock draft and also explain why Bill Callahan may be a great offensive line coach, but the Titans need to take an offensive tackle early in the draft. And finally, we'll go over my late round picks, and boy, do I think I have an elite mock draft for you guys today. Before we dive into it, thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. I got a lot of great content coming your guys' way this week. Tomorrow, we're going to look at the top 3 options for the Titans at 7. Joe Alt, Malik Nabers, and Rome Odunze as well. We're going to dive into our positional preview series before the NFL draft, starting on Wednesday's show with the offensive tackles. We'll dive into 180 prospects by the time we get to the NFL draft. You're not going to want to miss any of that. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. But with that being said, again, my number one point here on today's show. Number one, the Tennessee Titans need to draft an offensive tackle in the first 2 rounds, but also, they can't pass on Rome Odunze if Malik Nabers and Joe Alt are off the board. So I have been asked multiple times to do a mock draft Monday where Alt is not available, where Nabers is not available. And to me, I have been saying it since the draft season began, since the end of the regular season. I have said my prospect rankings here, non-quarterbacks, Marvin Harrison Jr. number 1, Joe Alt number 2, Malik Nabers number 3, but Rome Odunze is number 4. And I would rather take Rome Odunze at number 7 than trade down or take Olu Fashanu or Talise Fawanga or any of the other, or J.C. Latham at number 7. I would take Rome Odunze over all of the other offensive tackles outside of Joe Alt, and I would take Rome Odunze over the option to trade back in the draft because I think Rome Odunze is that elite of a prospect. And look, this is an incredible draft with wide receiver and offensive tackle. But in any other NFL draft, Rome Odunze would have been wide receiver 1. Look at last year where you had Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnston. Rome Odunze destroys them as a prospect. So to me, it's not even close. You take Rome Odunze at number 7 if Alt and Malik Nabers are off the board. Look at Odunze as a prospect, 6'2", 212 pounds. He can be a pure X receiver, like your number 1, line up on the line of scrimmage, number 1 guy. He can also move around. You could put him in the slot. You could have him as the Z wide receiver as well. He can literally do anything. He is an elite. When I say it, I mean it. Elite contested catch guy. Can go up over the top of cornerbacks, is going to win with physicality, is going to win with body control, with great hands, strong hands as well. And it's not just he's a contested catch guy. A lot of people are like, oh, can he separate? He is a separator. He is a route runner. He may not have elite top-end speed, Tyreek Hill, Malik Nabers, top-end speed, but the guy ran a 4.45 40. What are we talking about here? He's still very, very fast, and he's got good route craft. He understands how to set things up. And here's the thing, what I will say on the flip side of it, he didn't have great route diversity at Washington, okay? He didn't run a ton of different routes. You look at his route usage chart from Reception Perception from Matt Harmon, great stuff. Make sure that you go check out Matt Harmon's Twitter account, his website, his profiles on these wide receivers. He ran a lot of 9 routes, ran a lot of slants, 17.8%. 9 routes, which is vertical routes, go routes down the field, 16.4% on slant routes. He didn't run a ton of out routes, didn't run a ton of corners, didn't run a ton of posts, didn't run a ton of digs. So the route diversity was lacking. But in his other routes, and when he did run those routes, he showed the ability to run those routes correctly. So he's a guy who has the contested catch ability, but also has the ability to run routes. It's not like it's something that he can't do. Again, contested catch maverick, absolutely incredible contested catch ability. And look, there seems to be a conversation philosophically about, do you want someone who's a contested catch guy? Do you want someone who's a separator? And me, I'm an old school football guy. Age doesn't matter. I think that, yes, I would love someone who can separate. But sometimes you can't get separation. Sometimes you're double teamed. Sometimes the coverage is correct and the route that you run just isn't open based on the coverage that you see. Who can win when everything goes wrong? That is a contested catch guy. So you get that with Rome Odunze, elite contested catch ability, but he also has speed. It's not like he's a slow guy like a Keon Coleman or something like that. And he also does have the ability to run routes. He just wasn't asked to run a ton of different routes in college, but he can do that. He is physical. He is a smart player. He is a football player's football player. All right, I love Rome Odunze here. And look, another hit on him. Again, not top-notch 4.3 speed, but a 4.45. He's not a yards after catch demon. That's the thing. Him and Malik Nabers have different profiles, and these are the big differences. Nabers is more explosive. He's more of a yards after catch guy, and that's why I would lean Malik Nabers in my rankings. But they're right there with each other. And again, I'm not passing on Rome Odunze at number 7. So I just think that Rome Odunze is fantastic. I think there are Titans fans out there that are completely sleeping on Rome Odunze. I would absolutely love to pair him with DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley. And again, I've been making this point all along with people who say that wide receiver is no longer a need for the Titans. Calvin Ridley is going to be 30. DeAndre Hopkins is going to be 32 and is in the last year of his contract. Will Levis is 24 years old. Who is going to be Will Levis's number 1 target on the outside for the next decade? It can be Rome Odunze. He can replace the A.J. Brown-sized hole in our hearts. He can be the number 1 guy. And let me just say this, everyone is freaking out and throwing a parade for the Houston Texans. If the Titans had DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, and Rome Odunze, that is rivaling the Texans trio, and that would be a nightmare for NFL defenses. Think about how that would help Chigakonkwo. Think about how that would lighten boxes and have deep safeties playing back so that you can run Tajay Spears and you can run Tony Pollard. I mean, to me, it's asinine to think that it would be better to trade back or better to take Olaf Fashanu or Talisa Fawanga or J.C. Latham at 7 instead of just taking Rome Odunze, the elite prospect who would be a top 5 pick in most drafts that we've seen in recent memory. So don't overthink it, Titans. Take the best player on the board. And if Joe Alt and Malik Nabers are not there, you take Rome Odunze. But then what do you do at offensive tackle? I'm going to answer that question and tell you why it's so important the Titans hit offensive tackle early here in just a second. Before, though, I do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets. Number 1, they have the best features of any ticket buying app in the market space. Number 1, you get all-in prices. One of the most frustrating things for me when I buy tickets for anything is you show me the price of the ticket and then I click to check out and now each ticket is $50, $70 more than what you said it was. You don't have that problem with Game Time. Also, they give you an accurate view from your seat. So when you sit down, you know what you're going to be looking at. And that is absolutely elite in the ticket buying space. Also, they have killer last-minute deals like flash deals and zone deals, so you're going to get a good price on the tickets that you buy, and they have a lowest price guarantee, the Game Time guarantee, where if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time's going to credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Lowest last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. It is a mock draft Monday, looking at how it would go for the Titans if they took Rome Odunze with their first pick. They need to address offensive tackle next, and I'm going to explain why it is so vital that the Titans get an offensive tackle with their first two picks. Before I continue, thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday. Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. You know, in the midst of my excitement about it, Rome Odunze, I forgot to mention 92 catches, 1,600 yards, 13 touchdowns last year. The year before that, his sophomore year, 75 yards, or his junior year, 75 catches, 1,145 yards, 7 touchdowns. I mean, it's going to be hard to find a guy that productive against Power 5 schools. He was the most productive of the top 3 wide receivers. Nabers, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze dwarfed them in production against Power 5 schools. So gotta add in the production factor there too. But the point here is now the Titans must pivot, and they need to take an offensive tackle in the second round. And as I've said, I want Joe Alt in the first round. That would be my ideal scenario for the Titans, is to take Joe Alt at pick number 7. But I've been asked, and I wanted to oblige, what would it look like if Alt and Nabers were off the board? And this is how it would go for me. You get into the second round at pick number 38, and you have a couple of options at offensive tackle. You have Kingsley Suamatai from, how can I forget here? BYU. Then you have Kieran Ademaji, and then you have Roger Rosengarten from Washington. I always struggle with saying the name. Kieran Ademaji is from Yale. So you have those options. Some people would think maybe Patrick Paul, but for me, Patrick Paul, because of how high his hips are, because of how much development he needs, I wouldn't really consider him as an option at pick number 38. I know a lot of you guys like Jordan Morgan or Tyler Guyton. They were off the board. So to me, it was Suamaitai, Ademaji, or Rosengarten. And for me, you look at all their different strengths and weaknesses, and I go with Kingsley Suamaitai. So Suamaitai is 6'4.5", 325 pounds, 34.25-inch arms. So he checks a lot of boxes in terms of size. Would I like a little taller? Maybe so, but I like what he brings to the table, and he's only 21 years old. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Suamaitai to improve, I guess, is the point. And you add in what he's shown here. All right. Number one, really athletic. A really, really athletic guy who has the ability to move around. And that's very important in today's NFL with the athleticism of edge rushers. You also look at his strength. He does a very good job of showing strength against the bull rush. Drive blocks, he's able to move people. That's important. And great grip strength. Gets his hands on you, is able to keep his hands on you. That's important. And there's incredible versatility here. He's played a ton of snaps at right tackle and a ton of snaps at left tackle, which in the Tennessee Titans situation, that would be important. You can't count on 2 rookie offensive tackles. So if you take Suamaitai, you're able to play him at left tackle or right tackle, and then you bring in a veteran after the draft, like an Andrews Pete or a Mekhi Becton, and now you have some versatility to make that call, and I think that's very important. Look, Suamaitai needs to work on his technique with his anchor. Like, he's strong against the bull rush, but he's got to get better at sitting down and doing it technically sound instead of just winning with his natural strength. His technique with his punches and his hands, he uses good hands, but he, of course, can get better, and that's going to be something that you hear about with a lot of these, second round, mid-round tackles. I think that's going to be something that you hear all the time. And then finally, his consistency in run blocking. All right, he needs to get better there. But with his age, with the athleticism, with the tools available, he is going to be a high pick. He is going to go high in the second round. And I think Suamaitai would make a ton of sense. And again, one of the points that I've been making here is the Tennessee Titans need to take an offensive tackle in the first 2 rounds. And I know that Bill Callahan is, if not the best, one of the best offensive line coaches in the history of the sport of football. You put him up there with a Jeff Stoutland, a Dante Scarnecchia, guys in that realm. Bill Callahan deserves that credit. But if you look into Bill Callahan's history, he hasn't been turning water to wine necessarily. He's not Jesus out here is the joke that I've been making. Bill Callahan has had a ton of top-level talent. And got to give credit to Mike Herndon at Mike Miracles on Twitter. Mike isn't a big fan of me, but that's all right. I'm not petty. I don't hold grudges. If you make a smart point, I don't really care what you think about me. I'm going to, put that out. And Mike made a list of the Pro Bowl or all-pro level players that have been draft picks under Bill Callahan in the last 16 years. You have Alan Faneca. You have Nick Mangold. You have DeBrickashaw Ferguson, Brandon Moore, Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, Travis Frederick, Trent Williams, Brandon Scherf, Joel Bitonio, Jack Conklin, Wyatt Teller. Okay, you go through the list: Faneca, Mangold, Ferguson, Smith, Martin, Frederick, Trent Williams, Brandon Scherf, and Conklin. They were all first-round picks and decently high first-round picks, with the exception of the interior guys, Faneca, Mangold, and Frederick. All of the offensive tackles, or converted offensive tackles, were picked in the first half of the draft. Look at Joel Bitonio. That's a high second-round pick there. So the majority of these guys that Bill Callahan has molded into all-pro or Pro Bowl level players have been high picks in the draft. Look, Bill Callahan is going to get the best out of the player, but getting the best out of a 5th-round pick may not be the player that the Titans need to solve their offensive line problems long term. So the point that I'm trying to make by showing this tweet from Mike Herndon is, while Bill Callahan is one of the best offensive line coaches of all time, no coach can do it without exceptional talent. So the Titans need to give Bill Callahan exceptional talent. That's why I think they should not pass on Joe Alt if he's available at 7. But if Joe Alt isn't available and they need to go with Rome Odunze at 7, which is great with me, then it is important that the Titans hit early in the second round on offensive tackle. So Suamaitai, Ademeji, Rosengarten. Maybe if, Jordan Morgan falls. I think Jordan Morgan is a guard, personally. Maybe if Tyler Guyton falls to that pick, that would be a good option as well. But either way, if they do go wide receiver at number 7, the Titans absolutely must take an offensive tackle with their second-round pick. So with that being said, though, we are going to move forward. I got a lot of other picks here to talk about. We got 106, 146, 182, the 3 picks in the 7th round, and I think I absolutely hit it out of the park. So we'll dive into the rest of my NFL mock draft on this Mock Draft Monday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Before we do, though, I do want to let you guys know that today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's the first thing that you do if you had an extra hour in your day? Go for a run, take a nap, read a book. For me, I'd probably watch some more film leading up to the draft. The point is, if you had extra time, how would you use it? If time was unlimited, what would you do? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. If you're thinking about starting therapy, again, make sure you give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn to get 10% off your first month today. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Titans fans, let's cap off today's Mock Draft Monday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We have talked about our first pick. I took Rome Odunze at 7, and I don't think the Titans should pass on him if Alt and Nabers are off the board. We talked about why Bill Callahan still needs top-tier talent in the draft, and that's why the Titans have to take offensive tackle at number 2. I got Rome Odunze. I got Kingsley Suamatai. I would be very happy if that was the Titans' first 2 picks, but we got 6 other picks to make in this mock draft, and I'm going to roll through them rapid fire. You guys let me know down below, how do you feel about my first 2 picks? And then let me know how you feel about the overall mock draft as well. Before we get into the final 6 picks, do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Tomorrow, I'm going to do a deep dive into the top 3 prospects that are fits for the Titans, why I would take them, why I wouldn't take them. Joe Alt, Malik, Nabers. We'll talk more Rome Odunze at the end. And then on Wednesday, or the third show of the week, I'm going to dive into offensive tackles as a whole and start our NFL draft preview series. Also want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV. It's called Locked On Sports Today. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts from Locked On, plus national shows that cover every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. But diving into pick number 106. All right, so we have a wide receiver, we have an offensive tackle, but I think it's time to double down. The Tennessee Titans need to take 2 offensive tackles in this draft class, and I would be okay with 2 wide receivers. I didn't get to do that in this draft, and I'll explain why, but 2 offensive tackles seems like a must. This is one of the best and deepest offensive tackle classes we have seen of all time. And the Titans have the worst offensive tackle situation in the NFL right now. So they need to double dip. And that's why at 106, I took Javon Foster, the offensive tackle out of Missouri. Foster is a huge man, great length, great height. I mean, my apologies. I'm totally off. With 106, I took Muhammad Kamara, the edge rusher out of Colorado State. He has twitchy movement, folks. 6'2", 250 pounds, and twitched up lateral movement. He is a powerful player as well. He's got incredibly quick hands. That is his pass rush polish, Muhammad Kamara. He is such a polished player with his rips, his swims. He is going to come in and be able to play right away. And he should. He's 24 years old. He'll be 25 years old soon. So when you get a player like that at 106, you're taking him because you want him to come in right away and help the edge rush group. Look, he doesn't have great length. Like I said, he's only 6'2". He doesn't have great height at 6'2", the arm length, all of that. He can work on having a better second move after his initial move off the line of scrimmage. The testing, his 3-cone, his short shuttle, they were a little concerning, but the 40-yard dash, the 10-yard split of the 40-yard dash, incredible burst. He had a great vertical jump as well. So he's a guy who has great explosion off the line of scrimmage. He has high motor, like a really, really high motor. This is a tremendously tough player who is going to play hard all the time, good in run defense as well. Against some of the offensive tackles in the NFL, they're a little bit longer. He might struggle with getting his hands on them and using those moves, but that's something that's just going to be natural with his size. I think that he's somebody who can come in right away and with the Titans' deficiencies on the defensive line, contribute and be productive. Look at this production. He's had 45.5 sacks in his college career, 16 sacks in 2022, 17 sacks in 2023. So high motor, good pass rush polish, explosive and twitchy, ready to contribute right away, and elite production. Those are 5 things right there that I cannot pass up on at 106. Now we get into Javon Foster, the offensive tackle from Missouri, at pick number 146 for the Tennessee Titans. 6'5", 313 pounds, 34.6-inch arms, great hands. I mean, he has excellent hands, strong hands, Really smart with his punch and moving around and understanding when to fire those different hands, can use his hands independently. That's something we're going to talk about with Joe Alt. He's really a two-handed guy. He doesn't use them independent of each other, and that's something that he needs to grow with. But Javon Foster does have good independent hands. He's somebody who is a great fit in the zone running scheme that the Titans are going to use. Reach blocks, down blocks, front side kickouts on outside zone. I mean, he is a great fit, and the experience. He has played 2,700 snaps at left tackle, a 3-year starter with over 800 snaps every single year in those 3 starts. So durable, reliable. He's got a thick lower body and thick arms as well, which is very important. Thick boy action. All right. Love that. And he is explosive with his quickness. Now, I think that, and from the reports that you read on Javon Foster, he's a guy who he may not beat the edge to the corner. He can get beat with speed past him. He's a guy who gets a little bit too much width and then maybe can get beat inside. But those are really the only concerns, is how he deals with that. I just think Javon Foster would be such a good option for the Titans. And while Suamatai is somebody who maybe needs some development, like he needs to work on his technique with his anchor, technique with his punch, consistency and run blocking, I think there's a chance that Javon Foster could come in right away and start immediately with the experience that he's had in a Power 5 SEC conference. Like, I love Javon Foster. What an incredible pick that would be for the Titans to leave this draft with Rome Odunze, Kingsley Suamatai, and Javon Foster. Ladies and gentlemen, I am absolutely cooking right now with this mock draft. But moving forward to pick 182, and this may be my most controversial pick of the mock draft, but I went with Kamani Vidal, the running back out of Troy. All right, Vidal's 5'7", 213 pounds. He is a power runner. Look, Tajay Spears does really well with short yardage situations. Tajay Spears was one of the best short yardage situation running backs on 3rd downs and 4th downs last year. Like, Tajay Spears isn't somebody who struggles in short yardage, but Spears is not a power runner, and neither is Tony Pollard. Pollard and Spears have similar profiles as players. Vidal is going to be somebody who comes in and runs with great power. He's got tree trunk lower legs. That's absolutely huge, but he's not somebody who's slow. He's got good straight line speed. Like, he's a burner. 4.4 40. He has great straight line down the field speed. All right. And Vidal is the best pass blocker in the entire draft at running back. Like, pass protection, he is elite. And we know that Brian Callahan really, really values that. And also, I would tell you that Brian Callahan has said numerous times that he likes his running backs to have a variety of skill set. There can be a little bit of overlap, but he wants to make sure he has a running back who can do everything. And having a power running back like Vidal, who is elite in pass protection, with Pollard and Spears, who also are very good in pass protection, you can play any of your running backs at any time. Now, Vidal doesn't have the best burst and change of direction, agility, isn't going to really catch the ball out of the backfield a ton, or at least he wasn't asked to do a lot of that in college. And he doesn't have great wiggle. He's not going to juke a bunch of guys out. He doesn't have wiggle like Tajay Spears. But again, as a 3rd running back right here, I think it makes a ton of sense. And a lot of people were asking me, why not wide receiver here? Well, there weren't really a lot of good wide receivers on the board. You guys know I really like Luke McCaffrey late in the draft. McCaffrey went off the board 2 picks before this. So I had the option of Kamani Vidal, Jordan Jefferson, the interior defensive lineman from LSU, Tip Raymond, the tight end out of Wisconsin. Those were all Wisconsin is Nebraska. Now it's all getting jumbled. But the whole point is, here were the wide receivers that I could have picked at 182. Casey Washington, DeCorian Clark, Anthony Gold, Joshua Cephas, David White, Jordan Whittington. Like, I'd rather just roll with Treylon Burks as wide receiver 4 and get Kamani Vidal. All right. So I loved that pick for the Titans. It was a tough situation, but I feel very confident with the pick that I had. Then we go to the 7th round picks, and I'm just going to rapid fire these off. 227, I took Trey Taylor, the safety out of Air Force. This is Ed Reed's cousin, and he plays like it. He's had 7 interceptions in his career. Last year, he had 3 interceptions and 7 pass breakups. He is a ball hawk. And this late in the draft, in the 7th round, I'm getting a guy with that ball production. He is physical against the run game. He is a smart player, obviously, with that NFL lineage, Ed Reed being his cousin. He's a versatile safety who can play in the box, over the slot, back deep. He can play man against tight ends and running backs, and that's how I would use him on passing downs as kind of that third safety who you can use as a matchup. Think about Dane Cruikshank's ability in that realm. He also is a guy who is going to be immediately helpful on special teams. He's physical, not afraid to tackle, and he said himself in interviews, did a good interview with Justin Mello from the Draft Network, where he even said, I'm ready to help on special teams right away. So you got a guy with the right mentality, and I'm taking a ball hawking safety from Air Force. He's in the Air Force or played for Air Force. I mean, this is a guy who is going to dominate the airspace, air traffic control. Okay. Look, he may not have the best zone coverage awareness. You're not going to use him back deep on passing downs like third downs and stuff like that. He may not be able to play man coverage on wide receivers as well at the next level, but at this late in the draft, getting a guy with that ball production, easy. And then next pick, 242, I took Trevin Wallace, the linebacker out of Kentucky, who there's no way that Wallace goes this late, right? 6'1", 237 pounds, size, speed, length, great in pursuit with his athleticism, hits with absolute power to be that size and run with that speed. Look, he needs help with the mental aspects of the game. He's over-aggressive and overruns his run fit. Not great in zone coverage and understanding routes. So he's a guy who's going to need some development. But I think he could come in and be a bigger David Long Jr. Like, he has that speed, that explosion, that ability. Let him sit for like a year, play special teams, rotate him in on early downs, let this guy run. I think he's a guy who could replace Kenneth Murray immediately after the year and could develop into a very good starting middle linebacker. I love Trevin Wallace at this pick. My final pick is Gabe Hall, the defensive lineman out of Baylor. 6'6", 290 pounds, 38-inch arms. This guy is a size freak. Okay, he's going to be a 5 technique defensive lineman, so he's somebody who can replace the Danico Autry role. Is he going to be Danico Autry as a 7th round pick this late in the draft? Absolutely not. But that length, that size, his ability to pick him this late in the draft as a DN defensive lineman who you can rotate in and who you can develop different areas of his game. You just don't have guys that size, that length, that athleticism. And to take him this late in the draft, it makes too much sense. So to recap my entire mock draft here, again, I was asked to do one where Joe Alt and Malik Nabers are off the board. You take Rome Odunze at number 7, Kingsley Suamaitai at number 38, Muhammad Kamara, the edge rusher from Colorado State, at 106, Javon Foster, the experienced offensive tackle from Missouri, at 146, Kimani Vidal, the strong, powerful, pass-protecting running back out of Troy at 182, Air Force's safety, Trey Taylor at 227, Trevon Wallace, linebacker from Kentucky at 242, and Gabe Hall, defensive lineman from Baylor at 252. We'll get an interior defensive lineman like a nose tackle in undrafted free agency. Just like the Titans got Tart, just like the Titans got Naquan Jones, just like the Titans got Isaiah Matt. But with that being said, let me know your grade for this mock draft down below. That's going to do it. I'll be back tomorrow to break down the top 3 prospects in the draft, unless there's even bigger Tennessee Titans news. But as always, I'm ahead of myself here. Where's the music at, baby? A lot of draft content coming your way. Can't wait to dive into it. That is going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.